أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين أما بعد باشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. So just really briefly, the last time we spoke was on ayah number 99, and ayah number 99 really focuses on Yusuf alayhi salam, his first interaction with his parents. After many years of not seeing his parents, this ayah number 99 is the actual time when he first laid eyes on his parents since the time of when he was taken, and put in a will. We covered a few topics. Just a quick review. One of the things we covered was that Yusuf alayhi salam was the one who allowed his family to come to Egypt, completely on his terms. Yusuf alayhi salam was the one who invited them and the one who permitted them into the land of Egypt. Now, this is a difficult thing to do, right? You're talking about taking not just 1 or 2 or 3 or 10 people. You're talking about over 10 families, and who knows how many children they have, or who knows how many wives they have, right? So you're talking about either 60, 70 people to 100 people, right? Maybe even more than that. We're not sure. However, Yusuf alayhi salam is the one who was able to initiate this. And we see his power, his authority in his seats amongst the Egyptian dignitaries, right? And Yusuf, as this states also that the king himself, the king of Egypt himself, fully trusted Yusuf alayhi salam with his position, right? Because Yusuf alayhi salam, he's the one who initiated it, no one else. He's the one who invited his family and gave them residence in Egypt. Secondly, we spoke about how Yusuf alayhi salam, the way he respected his parents, awa ilayhi abaway, he became a protection, or a sense of a protection for his parents, right? So his parents, after dealing with everything, specifically Yaqub alayhi salam, dealing with everything that he went through, being able to seek refuge or see your son as a form of protection for you. If you see your son and you're at an old age and you know your son will leave everything for you, will take care of you from thick and thin. Anything you do, you know that your son is going to be there for you. How would you look at your son after all of the time that you've never seen him since he was gone, he was taken away? The way he saw his son is as if that he saw his son as a sense of like serenity, or a sense of like protection. This is my shield for my stress and my struggle, right? So awa ilayhi abaway. And also the way Yusuf alayhi salam uses his words when he spoke to his family and his parents. He's so cautious. The words that he used was to make sure that he doesn't affect, or he doesn't offend any of his family members, even after what they did to him, right? So birrul walidain is being good, or having servitude towards your parents, right? And also being good to arham. And we spoke a lot about arham. Arham are people who share your womb, or your family members, your cousins, right? Your close relatives. And it's very powerful, this scene, how Yusuf alayhi salam went about doing this first initiation between him and his father. It was a powerful scene, because when emotions take over you, it's easy to just say things that are in your head, right? When you're very emotional, you tend to say things that sometimes you mean, but sometimes you don't. right? And sometimes you might slip something that might offend other people. Imagine, Yusuf alayhi salam took care of this event right here, this situation, and showed us how to deal with not only your father, your parents, but your siblings also, right? Lastly, we spoke about the complexity of families, right? And how that may lead to people like being deterred from their iman. That you might have family members who might affect you in a certain way, but through the story of Yusuf alayhi salam, we learn in a very powerful way how we deal with certain people, specifically in our family, and even outside of our family. Right? When we have rivals, or we have people who are just talking about us, or we have people who are making. Now, eventually, when you deal with between you and that community member, but to deal with those people, you have to deal with them that Yusuf alayhi salam dealt with them. It's through respect, kind, care, caringness, right? Reminding them about Allah. And eventually, these types of characteristics that you show them, it will get to their hearts. One day. It's not possible for somebody who sees another person and they hate that person, but every time they see that person, they're smiling. They're always speaking good. They're giving them gifts. There is not possible for somebody to continue being angry at that person when all they do is just being kind, right? Eventually, they're going to give in. Or either that, or they're just going to continue the way of shaitan. So for them, it's a toss-up. But for you, it's no big deal, right? And it's so much stress off of your shoulders. Now let's start with ayah number 100. Now, subhanAllah, this whole week, I was hoping to combine ayah number 100 and 101. Because 101 is the last ayah of the story of Yusuf alayhi salam. The story of Yusuf ends at 101. And it continues, obviously, it's Yusuf, the story of Yusuf, well, the surah of Yusuf continues on for a few more ayats, but the actual story ends at 101. I was trying to combine these two, but after my studies and after kind of like trying to compile as much as I can, this ayah 100, there are a lot of things to talk about within this ayah. So much so that I don't think that we will be able to finish it today. So I decided to kind of jump back and forth between ayah number 100 and ayah number 101 because there's a stark connection between the two ayats. So you'll see me jumping around from ayah number 100 and 101. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم ورفع أبويه على العرش وخروا له سجدا وقال يا أبت هذا تأويل رؤياي من قبل قد جعلها ربي حقا وقد أحسن بي إذ أخرجني من السجن وجاء بكم من البدو من بعد أن نزغ الشيطان بيني وبين إخوتي إن ربي لطيف لما يشاء إنه هو العليم الحكيم. In this ayah, Yusuf alayhi salam, we see what he does with his father and his mother. As if it's not enough that he already did what he did in ayah number 99, to be a protection for his father, to embrace them and show them that he cared, being there for them, right? He take birrul walidain another step. And what does he do? وَرَفَعَ أَبَوَيْهِ على العرش. He takes his father and his, but what he is both his parents, right? And we explained that from the previous ayah. He takes them both and he puts them on al-arsh. Al-arsh is specifically the throne of a ruler, a throne of a king, right? Arsh is only meant for people of dignitary status. Like we call regular chairs kursi, right? Arsh is more of a designated chair for somebody who has higher level, right? So he takes his parents and he puts them on ala arsh. وَخَرُّوا لَهُ سُجَّدًا. And at that very moment, it says خَرُّوا لَهُ سُجَّدًا. They all fell down in humbleness, in sujood to Yusuf alayhi salam. Now there's different opinions in this very specific, these wordings here. But to continue on, we'll come back to it inshallah. قَالَ يَا أَبَتِي هَذَا تَأْوِيلُ رُؤْيَايَ. He says to his father, and he says it in a way where he's like, it's an epiphany. Like it just came to him, right? It's like a revelation. And after all of these years, the intimate moment that he had with his father before. Remember when he had that dream when he was a very young age? He had that dream. And who was the person that he went to? When you have good news, when you say you accomplished your master's degree, the first person you go to tell your good news is usually the person you love most. Am I correct? Right? The first person you think of at this heightened sense of emotion, when you're very happy, you would usually go to the person you love most, whether that be your wife, right, or your best friend. And you're like, listen, I have good news for you. I got something. Something came to me, right? The case of Yusuf alayhi salam, as a young boy, it showed you that he was very attached and he loved his father. Because that dream was something he was proud of. He knew that dream meant something to him. But he didn't know. So he went to his father and he told him first. He told his father the complete entire dream. And his father gave the translation in a way where he knew that he's not ready for it yet. Because he was just a young child. So if we go back, we'll go back to it inshallah in a bit. But if we go back to it, we'll notice that Yaqub alayhi salam, when he gave his son advice from that dream, it was very vague. It was not very specific, right? Now, at this very moment, when he sees all of his siblings, their family, as well as his contention, or this contention with the opinion if the father and the mother really made sujood to them or not, or was it just the family members. But we'll speak about that inshallah. But whether the case may be, whether it's the family or the entire family or just the relatives, they made sujood to him, right? And this is the moment when Yusuf alayhi salam started to realize his dream. And he says again, he says to who? He says to his father, he says, Ya abati. And remember we spoke about abati from the beginning. The word abati is a way to say father in the loving way, a loving form. So you can either say abi, which is my father, or abati with a ta is another way to express more love, saying your father's name, if that makes sense, right? So he says it again, Ya abati, hada ta'weelu ru'yaya. This is the explanation of my dream. This is what I had min qabl, the dream that I had when I told you. This is what it was meant to be. This is what the explanation of that dream. He realized that dream was at that event that just happened in this very moment, right? قد جعل ربي حقا جعلها ربي حقا. Indeed, Allah, my Lord, has made it come to pass, has made it come about, has made the event come to truth. My dream, Allah made it come to truth. Right? And then he says, وَقَدْ أَحْسَنَ بِي إِذْ أَخْرَجَنِي مِنَ السِّجْنِ. He says, now he starts to talk about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You notice, I want to kind of make it clear that this whole scene, I cannot imagine that it's full of emotions. The moment that he sees his father for the first time, the moment that his brothers, the one that caused him shame and difficulty and hardship, they all made sujood to him out of humbleness. The type of emotion that Yusuf must have felt at this very moment, right? What does he do? Remember, this is a theme with Yusuf alayhi salam. In every major point of his life, whether it's hardship or whether it's something with goodness, this is what he does every single time. He recognized and remember Allah. He recognized and remember Allah at that very moment. This very moment, he says, once he saw the explanation of his dream, he says, وَقَدْ أَحْسَنَ بِي إِذْ أَخْرَجَنِي مِنَ السِّجْنِ وَجَاءَ بِكُمْ مِنَ الْبَدُوِ. He says that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has been so good to me. This is Yusuf alayhi salam speaking. He never once, because of what he says now, he never once thought bad about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala during the events that happened in his life. Rather, everything that happened in his life, he sees it as Allah being good to him. He says, indeed Allah has been the best to me, ahsan, not just good. Allah has given me the best. He has been the best to me from the time when he freed me from prison. Now I want you to remember that. He specifically chose that very moment in his life to say at this time. Right? He says, from the time that he took me out of prison until, and also he brought all of you guys to me. All right, so what is he saying here? Yusuf alayhi salam, he's recognizing the timeline of events that led up to this point. But he didn't say, from the time when my brothers put me into the well. Right? He didn't choose that time. In fact, if we know the story of Yusuf alayhi salam, that was the event that started everything up until this point, right? The event that started everything, that caused him hardship for the entire family, was that very event when the brothers took him and put him in the well, right? Yusuf alayhi salam, he chose not to mention the event when he's in front of his brothers and the entire family. This is Yusuf. This is how he was. Now, doesn't that make you recognize someone else? Is very familiar. The characteristics that he's having right now is just like the characteristics of his father. Is very similar. If we analyze how Yaqub alayhi salam was when he spoke to his sons, is very similar to Yusuf alayhi salam when he's speaking at this very moment. Now, let's rewind. Yaqub alayhi salam, at various moments of the story, let's go back to the beginning. When he spoke to his sons, When they came back with a bloody shirt, crying late at nighttime, saying that Yusuf has been eaten by a wolf, right? What did Yaqub alayhi salam choose to say? How did he respond to his sons? Didn't he say, he didn't say you guys did it. No. It was you guys that did it. Did he say that? He didn't say that. He was very careful with his words. In fact, he said, rather, something made your souls do this. Something made your souls do this. The way he said it is not blaming them. He's saying that something has caused you to do this. He's blaming something else. He's pointing his fingers at something else and not his sons. Very, very powerful. Yusuf alayhi salam took the same approach when he chose to say that from the time when I was taken out of prison. Because he could have easily said, from the time when I was in the well. Now, even though he didn't say when my brothers didn't put me in the well, even though he just the fact that he recognized that the event of the well was the one that started everything, he didn't choose to say that. Because he could have, even though he said, from the time when I was in the well, right? When he just says that, he doesn't recognize his brothers. Right? He's still kind of, he's still kind of blaming him if he were to say that, correct? But he chose to omit it completely. Do you understand? The humbleness that he had. Now, if we go further, we see how much more humble is Yusuf alayhi salam. He says, وَجَاءَ بِكُم مِّنَ الْبَدْوِ مِن بَعْدِ نَزَغَ الشَّيْطَانَ بَيْنِي وَبَيْنَ إِخْوَتِي. So he says, and also Allah brought you to me. Now I want to pause here, because who is the one that initiated the ticket for his whole family to come into to come into Egypt? Who was the one that gave the executive order to say, I allow this entire family to come into Egypt and stay in Egypt? They have full residence. Give them a passport. Everything they need, we give them a house, we give them everything that they need. Who was the one that gave that? Yusuf. Yusuf was the one that was able to do that. So if anybody else were to have that position, they would say, you remember when you, what's the reason why you live in America right now? It's because of me. So you owe me, right? Or he could just say, I'm the one that made you come into Egypt. Just the fact that he says that is very egotistical, right? Like he's boasting, like, yeah, I'm the one that allowed you in. But he didn't say that. He recognized Allah's power and Allah's authority over his authority. Who is the most powerful in Egypt right now? Yusuf and the king. We can see that Yusuf has almost the exact same power as the king because of what he can do. Remember with Binyamin, he gave them the punishment. He didn't go to the king and ask the king, what's the punishment for somebody who steals? He's the one that did it. Do you see his authority in Egypt? If it's not the same level as the king, it's right underneath it, right? So that's the authority of Yusuf. Yusuf alayhi salam, he recognized that Allah has authority over him. And he says, Allah is the one that caused you all, my family, to bring you to me to Egypt. Not me. It wasn't me. Yes, he did all the steps. Yes, it was him that took the initiative. Yes, it was him that planned everything. Planned the things against his brothers to go back and forth. Plan everything with Binyamin. Plan the thing with the shirt being thrown in his father. Perfect planning. But even though he recognized Allah's authority over himself. Now this is very difficult because when you have authority, it's very intoxicating. You get this high, especially for men for some reason. When we have authority over somebody else, we have this very toxic feeling. And that feeling, Shaitan plays with that feeling. And when he plays with that feeling, you abuse your authority over the person or over the thing or the person you have authority over. Whether you're a teacher, you're a Quran teacher, for example, right? And your student is having a difficult time memorizing just 5 lines. And you're just being patient with them. But one day you lose it. You're like, you're not listening to me. I'm your teacher. I'm going to give you the asa, the stick. Right? Give me your hand. You're right. That authority that you have over that child, fear Allah over that authority, because Allah is the one that has authority over you. So fear Allah, right? Now, with that aside, Yusuf alayhi salam recognizes. He says, Allah brought you to me. بعد أن نزغ الشيطان بيني وبين إخوتي. He says, after Shaitan has separated or caused us issues between me and Ikhwati, my brothers. Right? It's funny because now Yusuf alayhi salam, he says, Nazagha shaitan. Nazagh, the word nazagha means to like incitement of evil. Like you have a friend like, just drink the alcohol, it's okay. Like nobody's gonna watch. Right? Or like let's just get into a fight and then we'll ask Allah to forgive us later. Right? The incitement is like pushing. Or nazagh can also mean like poking. Like you know how something's poking you, it's just you're bothered, right? Like somebody's like, hey, and you try to ignore them. Maybe you're in prayer or something and they're just poking you. Like nazagha shaitan, that's what it means. To poke you or to bother you into doing something wrong. Right? So if we put this into context, بعد نزغ الشيطان بيني وبين إخوتي. This is very profound because he's saying this in front of his family. He might even be saying this in front of the majority of Egypt. Because we know that when you have this amount of people coming at the authority of the king, everybody's gonna know. The whole city is gonna be like, who are these people? I wanna know. I wanna come watch. Right? It's like an event that never happened before in Egypt's history. This has to be a big event. So possibly the king is there. Maybe even the Aziza, the one who tried to seduce Yusuf, she might be even there as well. We don't know. But we know that it's a big event, right? So he's saying this in front of a lot of people, right? So he says, same thing before. You remember when we said that Yaqub alayhi salam, he says to his sons that something caused you to do this, right? Listen, Yusuf alayhi salam, he says, بعد أن نزغ الشيطان. After Allah brought you to me after Shaitan. Shaitan was the one who poked between me and my brothers, who incited evil between me and my brothers. Now let's go back. What was the last advice that Yaqub alayhi salam gave to his son? Don't tell your brothers your dream. Why? Because indeed, Shaitan is the true enemy, not your brothers. He says Shaitan is the true enemy. Do you see the connection here? He did not blame his brothers for what happened. Who did he blame? He's blaming Shaitan. In front of his father, he's saying this. He internalized the lesson that his father told him from long time ago. Now, as a father, if I knew that I taught my son something, and after years, and I taught him only one time, and after years, I see him doing something that I taught him, I'm a very proud father, right? I'm a very proud father because I know that he's listening to me. So Yusuf alayhi salam, not only he's able to take revenge over his brothers at this very moment, not just revenge. He could have just said something with his mouth. Like, Allah brought you back to me after my brother took you away from me. Right? It's like it's a stab if he says that. He's like, man, why does he have to say that for? Right? But he didn't say that. He didn't blame his brothers for nothing. He blamed everything on Shaitan. Exactly what his father told him when he was a little boy. A powerful scene. And imagine Yaqub alayhi salam listening to his son. He would be, if I was in the shoes of Yaqub, I would be happy. I would be happy because I haven't seen my son for years. I don't know what's in his head. I don't even know if somebody taught him something else. Right? But hearing his son saying this, there's one of two things. Firstly, I know that my son Yusuf, even though I wasn't there with him for the majority of his life, he still has the most important thing, Tawheed. He still has Tawheed. My son, the one that I wasn't with for decades, I wasn't there to be able to teach him, but he still has Tawheed. What does this teach us? Our children at a young age, do not spoil them at a young age. And do not be too strict either. But this is the time when you want to instill something in their hearts, this is the time. If you want to give your son and daughter advice, this is the time. If you want to instill the love of Islam in the Quran, this is the time to do it. Because once they get older, they start to have their own ideas. They start to learn things from TikTok and social media and stuff like that. Right? But if you instill the love in their hearts, whatever they see, whatever they learn in public school, wherever they go in the world, if they know that Allah is number one and Quran is number two, you won't have to worry. Is that clear? You will not have to worry. Because whatever happens, even if you're not there with them, the love of Allah is sufficient for them. Hasbunallah wa ni'mal wakeel. Right? So Yusuf alayhi salam continues. He says, Inna Rabbi latiful lima yasha. Inna Rabbi latifun lima yasha. So he says, indeed, my Lord, my Rabb is subtle. Now the word latif is a name of Allah. He is gentle and he's subtle with whoever he wants, or with whatever events that he wants, right? Whoever he wants or whatever he wants. However he wants, he's gentle with it and he's subtle with it. Now, when we say this, when we say Latif, it gives the notion, or it gives the sense that Allah is with them every single step of the way. Now, to understand that, let's dive into the meaning of what Latif means, right? So Lutf, the word Lutf or Latif has the connotation of being subtle. Now, subtle is like, it's you don't really see it, but it's there, right? For example, something happens in your life, right? It's just one of the most major things that happens in your life, and it's like from the time when you're a teenager up until the time when you're 40 years old, right? That issue or whatever that is has been happening ongoing in your life, right? And it's just, for example, let's just give an example, right? A cousin or a family member has been nagging you and has been bothering you, has been making fun of you and just causing a big scene, right? From the time when you're young, and then progressively, let's just say every Eid, they're saying like, oh, where has this guy been? When you're walking to the family, right? Like, where have you been? In front of everybody. Making everyone think like, oh yeah, this guy, he's been gone for all the time, right? And then every single year, every single event, they do something that just gets under your skin, right? For years. Now, why am I saying this? There's going to be a point of time where you're going to realize that whatever happens in your life between you and that person, Allah planned that. Allah planned that for you. You might not realize, but after years, there's going to be a point of time where you're going to just have that revelation. You're just going to have that epiphany where you're like, Allah, you have caused me this, but I can see now. I can see why. Allah has been subtle the whole entire time, has been with you the whole entire time. That's what it means. Latif, he's been there, and he's always been there for you. But it leads into a point where you might not realize until it hits you. And if it reminds you of Allah, if that whole thing reminds you of Allah, that is surely a test from Allah. A test in which you achieved. Why? Because anything that that reminds you of Allah, that's a good test. If it doesn't remind you of Allah, you failed. Because everything has to lead up into Allah. Everything. That's the only way where you know that you passed the test. For example, Ramadan. If you go about Ramadan, and a lot of people ask this question, they say, how do you know that my Ramadan was accepted? How? One of the ways to know that your Ramadan was accepted is that you're closer to Allah. If everything that you did in Ramadan made you closer outside Ramadan, that's how you know it's been accepted. That's one of the signs that it's been accepted. Right? So, another kind of form or try to understand what Latif means is that Allah, not only He was there with you throughout the whole trial or test, but He is the one that created that test for you. So imagine, somebody is with you, like you're going through a trial, right, in court, and you have a person, the lawyer, right? I forgot the person, right? The person that was with you in the whole entire trial. He's helping you. He's making sure that you're responding correctly. He's making sure that you look good in front of the jurors, right? Someone who's helping you every step of the way. But can that person control the outcome? Can that person control what happened in the past? No. Allah, not only He was with you every step of the way, but He's the one that caused everything from the beginning up until the moment that you are closer to Allah. So let's look at Yusuf. From the moment that jealousy entered the hearts of the brothers, was Allah's plan all along. Allah's plan all along. The moment when they took him, and they planned, from killing him to getting rid of him from, put him in a faraway land, or putting him into the well. All of that, to when he was sold as a servant, when he was seduced by the Aziza, when he went into prison, when the dream came to the king, all of this up until now, when he has the throne, what did Yusuf say? He is Latif. Allah is Latif. To who? To whoever He wants. Not just me. He could have said, Allah is Latif with me. Don't you see? Don't you see my life? My brothers. Don't you guys see what you guys did to me? Don't you guys see where I am now? Don't you see that? But Yusuf alayhi salam didn't say that. He said, Allah is Latif, lima yasha, with whoever and whatever He wills. What is He doing here? He's taking the opportunity, just like the father, to teach his brothers and whoever is in the audience about who? About Allah. But not him, not his achievements, not his character. Like, yeah, don't you see me? Like, I was a servant, I was a slave. Now I'm a king. How did I do that? You should learn from me. No, not once was he egotistical. Everything that he did, he made it, he recognized Allah. Every single point in his life. This is ayah number 100. The biggest lesson for us to take from is Yusuf alayhi salam. His lesson, his words, we take from ayah number 100. Allah, He says, Inna Rabbi Latiful. My Lord is Latif, lima yasha, to whoever. And then He says, Innahu huwal alimul hakim. Doesn't this sound familiar? Now He says, Innahu, indeed Allah is ever knowing. Alim, He's the most knowing. Wal Hakim, the most wise. Now these two goes together perfectly. If you're going through a situation, just know that Allah knows what you're going through. Allah knows. Not only that He knows, He is wise in what He knows. He knows how to take care of it. He knows the answer for you. He knows that He can test you with this issue for another year, for 2 years, 10 years. Why? Because He's Al-Hakim. He has the wisdom. So if you have a test that's ongoing, know that not only that Allah knows He is Alim, He knows it, but He's Hakim as well. He knows that you're able to be patient with it for another day, another 2 days, 5 days, 10 days, 10 years. That's Al-Hakim. Now this is like a rhyme, because we're familiar with this before. Yaqub alayhi salam. Going back to the beginning again. أبتي. Sorry, when Yaqub alayhi salam responds to his son, when his son Yusuf alayhi salam told them the dream, right? Yaqub says, yeah, he says, يا بني لا تقصص رؤياك على إخوتك فيكيدوا لك كيدا. He says, don't tell your brothers about your dream because they might scheme against you or they will scheme against you. Right? And then he says, إِنَّ الشَّيْطَانَ لِلْإِنسَانِ عَدُوٌ مُبِينٌ. Indeed, shaitan is the adu, not the brothers. Shaitan is the enemy. And then he says, وَكَذَلِكَ يَجْتَبِيكَ وَكَذَلِكَ يَجْتَبِيكَ وَيُعَلِّمُكَ مِنْ تَأْوِيلِ الْأَحَادِيثِ وَيُتِمُّ نِعْمَتُهُ عَلَيْهِ وعلى آل يعقوب كما أتمها أبويك من قبل إبراهيم وإسحاق. And then he says, إن ربك عليم حكيم. Same words that his father said to him, the last advice that he gave, he's repeating it again now. Yusuf alayhi salam and Yaqub alayhi salam has this connection that you will never come across between a father and a son. And they weren't even close. They weren't even close in physically, nor were they even close when they were separated. The connection that they have is so amazing. How can you have such a connection when they were separated by a week's journey from Canaan, Palestine, to Egypt? They weren't even close. Yet the connection is as if they lived their whole life together. Like Yaqub alayhi salam was teaching his son every single day of his life. That's the type of connection that they have. But it's not the case. The amazing connection that they have, to the point that Yusuf alayhi salam utters the same exact words that his father told him decades ago, right? So, now, I want to move on to 101. I'm going to jump back and forth to bring the points home, inshallah. There's a few things that I kind of want to connect, right? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says 101. رَبِّي قَدْ آتَيْتَنِي مِنَ الْمُلْكِ وَعَلَّمْتَنِي مِنْ تَأْوِيلِ الْأَحَادِيثِ فَاطِرَ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ أَنْتَ وَلِيِّي فِي الدُّنْيَا وَالْآخِرَةِ توفني مسلما وألحقني بالصالحين. This last ayah, it's very powerful. I keep saying this, but the words of the prophets is always powerful in the Quran. There's a reason why Allah chooses these specific responses and words, and He reveals them to us, because He wants us to know. This whole entire ayah is just a dua from Yusuf alayhi salam. Now pay attention to what he says. He says, Rabbi, قَدْ آتَيْتَنِي مِنَ الْمُلْكِ. Oh my Lord, you have given me something of power, of authority, mulk, kingship. You've given this to me. Now he starts everything with that. Why? Yusuf alayhi salam recognizes that yes, I might be powerful. To be honest, he might be the most powerful person in the entire world at that moment, right? Because we know that Egypt was the powerhouse of that area, or just the entire world in general, right? Now, he recognizes that Allah has given him this authority, this power. Allah is the one that's in charge. So he says, Allah, you've given me something of power, وعلمتني من تأويل الحديث. And then he says, you've taught me the interpretations of speeches or events or dreams. As you know, if you remember going back to the way beginning, what does ahadith means? It can mean either speeches, events, or dreams, right? You've taught me the understanding of these things. And then he says, فَاطِرَ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ. Now, Fatir, to understand Fatir, linguistically it means kind of like to start something or to originate something. So when he's saying that Allah is the one that originated, the one that created samawat, the heavens, wal ard, in the world, Allah is the one that was the one that originated this. Now to understand this, there's a reference in Arabic where a person who's digging in the desert, a person is digging in the desert, and when he digs, water starts to sprout. Once the moment when the water comes out, that's fatah, when it comes out. Once when it starts in the beginning, right? The person would say, Ana fatartuha. I'm the one that found this well. I am the one that originated it. So there's a sense of like ownership, right? This is mine. So when we say Allah is al-Fatir, everything, not only He's the one that originated it, He's the one that created it, but everything is to His ownership. So that's what it means. Not only everything Allah creates, but whatever He creates, He owns it as well. فَاطِرَ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ. Now, I want to speak about something else. Whenever we hear the words samawat and ard, in Arabic and the Arabic culture is slightly different from our understanding because we're Americans and we might understand that differently, right? So I'll try my best to kind of to explain. Whenever we hear as-samawati wal ard, it's to understand this, you have to understand how the Bedouins are, the Arabs, right? Now the Arabs, all they did in their life is just work day to day. Typically, they don't have savings. Not like us, like how we work. We don't have to worry much, right? And I want to focus on worrying. As people in America, or just people in general with the Western society, we work and we work and we work. However, we have this sense where we're self-sufficient. Like even though we don't have a job tomorrow, I know we have my savings. It'll protect me. I don't have to worry too much, right? Now take that life and compare it to a life where somebody who leaves their house and they don't know if they're going to come back with food. They leave their house and whatever they catch, they just hope, they ask Allah or whoever the God is, they hope that is enough for them to bring back and is enough for their family. They have it in their minds where if they leave their house in the morning and they know that they won't come back, enough for themselves is just enough for their family, they're like, okay, I'll sacrifice myself and it's just enough for my family. That type of lifestyle gives you an understanding that you don't have control. You don't have full control. Now, unfortunately, we live in a lifestyle where it's set up to take our minds away from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's just a reality. We wake up in the morning. How many times do we wake up and we ask Allah, Ya Allah, please just have my sustenance be sufficient for me today. because I know that you're the one in control. We have this ego, like this ego kind of like mentality where we're in control most of the time. That's the type of world we live in. Yusuf alayhi salam, he had the authority. He had the whole entire world. Or, how we can kind of understand it. But he recognizes that Allah is the one that is in control of him and his family. Even though he can say, "Oh Father, you can live in a palace. I can give you anything you want. If you want a Mercedes-Benz, I got you. Because I'm the king," right? That's how we live nowadays. My brothers, I want you to understand. We live in the city. Now, just talking about like mentally, we're waking up and we know that we have the sense of power. Like, we know that we have money in the bank. We know that we have food in the fridge. We know that our kids are going to be taken care of. We have the sense of kind of ownership, right? It's kind of egotistical in a sense. The other element to that is that we live in a city. We're city dwellers. And we wake up, and what do we see when we exit the house? We see man-made things. And what that does to us is that it feeds our minds that we're the one that created that. People, human beings, we created it with our own hands. We see city lights, we see cars, we see buildings. When we live in a city, almost 90% of the things that we see are handmade things by human beings. What's in the city reminds us about Allah? Very little. Now compare that to a person who lives in the outskirts of the city. What do they see or what do they hear even before they open their eyes? The croaking of the chickens, right? Nature. Now once they open their eyes, obviously they're in the house, but when they look outside, we take farmers for example. When they look outside, do they see any man-made structures? Very few. In fact, sometimes they don't see anything. All they see is a long plain of grass or whatever. They see mountains. They see the sun rising. They see the sky. They see everything. All of that. If it doesn't remind you of Allah, what's going to remind you of Allah? Do you see the stark difference between a person who lives in a city, who has savings, who has this, who has that, everything that they need, they have it, compared to a person who wakes up and they're not sure they have enough to eat that day. They have to have trust in something, right? And when they wake up, they see what? Something that they didn't create. They didn't create it. So who created it? If you live a life like this, not that I'm saying that we should live a life like that, but we have to contemplate over these things. Especially people who do not know anything other than the city. If you do not know anything other than the city, take yourself out of the city. Go camping. Bring some brothers who can remind you. Take yourself out of the comfort, out of your own bed, and go seek Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Know that you're never in control. You're never in control. We live in a life where it feeds us the understanding that we have control. That's what's dangerous in being in the city. That's what's dangerous, because it takes us away from the remembrance of Allah. That's what I want to say about as-samawati wal-ard. Because when Arabs, when they look up into the sky and they see everything on the land, none of it was made by their hands. So it gives them the sense that they are insignificant. Do you understand? When human beings feel as if they are better than everything, they have control, they are significant, that's when they start to lose their faith in Allah. When you start to see the bounty of Allah, His creation, and you are reminded consistently, wallahi, just look at the stars. Just look at the sun. Look at the mountain. Look at the grass in front of you. Look at the tree. You will feel insignificant because you cannot do anything close to that. It's all Allah. Creator, owner of everything in the heavens and everything on earth. The owner of everything in the heavens and everything on earth. Behind those three words, فاطر السماوات, it gives you a sense of humility. You are insignificant. Become yourself as well. The power behind this dua, فاطر السماوات والأرض, and he says, أنت ولي في الدنيا. Wali means here. He says, you are my protector. Now, wali in Arabic means, someone that's attached to you or following your footsteps. That's wali, right? And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala not only is attached to you, but that person that's attached to you is there to protect you. That's wali. Now, in Saudi Arabia, for example, the word wali is used as a title. To call somebody a wali is someone who has not only authority over you, but has responsibility over you as well. Right? So as a worker or as a maid, for example, Saudis, they would hire maids to kind of clean up their house and stuff like that. And it's not just practice in Saudi. Maids are practiced all over the world. And I just want to be clear about that, right? But they would have maids, and they would hire maids from other countries to come and then be the maid of the house. The wali of that maid is the person who employs that person, that maid, right? So he's the one that takes care of her, or that person's well-being. Everything that person needs, he would be the wali for it. So a wali is a person not only follows you or is with you, but has protection and care over you. So what is he saying here? Yusuf alayhi salam says, Anta, O Allah, you are my wali. Now I want to pause here, and I want you to think about Yusuf's entire life up until this point. And he's saying, Oh Allah, you were always with me. You were always with me. You were my wali. You were my caretaker. When I was a slave, when I was in that well. Do you understand the mentality that he has towards Allah? Not once in his life did he blame Allah for what happened to him. I want to internalize this with you guys. When something happens to us, we cannot blame Allah because He's our wali. He is the one that originated that issue that we're going through. And He's going to be latif with us. He's going to be with us the whole entire time. He's Alimul Hakim. He knows your issues. And He's also wise with it. And He's also your wali. He got you. He's with you. He'll take care of you. When, with all of these words, these names of Allah, when can you really blame Allah for anything in your life? Knowing that He's with you, knowing that He's taking care of you, knowing that He's Alimul Hakim, and knowing that He's your wali. Fi dunya wal akhirah. If you know that, no way can a person blame Allah for anything in his life. No way. So Yusuf alayhi salam says, Anta waliyi fi dunya wal akhirah. In this life, everything I went through, you were my wali. And I know that you're my wali in the akhirah as well. You are my wali in the place that is more important than this dunya. I need you more in the akhirah because I don't know where I'm going. Jannah or an-nar. You're my wali over there. Anta wali fil dunya wal akhirah. And then he says, Tawaffani musliman wa alhiqni bis salihin. Yusuf alayhi salam, this is what he says. He says, take me, make me die when I'm submitted to you. Tawaffani musliman. What does Muslim mean? Muslim is a person who submits to Allah. So Allah, when you're taking my life, take me while I'm a Muslim, while I'm submitting to you, Ya Allah. This is the wish of Yusuf alayhi salam. And then he says, وَأَلْحِقْنِي بِالصَّالِحِينَ. And then make me, attach me, combine me with those who are salih, who are of the righteous. Yusuf alayhi salam, he's making dua to Allah. He says, make me of the righteous, as if he's not already of the righteous. Wallahi, I've never seen anybody except for Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam who is like Yusuf alayhi salam, the righteous of the righteous. And he's saying, make me of the righteous, as if he's not amongst them already. What about us? What about us? If Yusuf alayhi salam never thought, or he's saying as if he's not amongst the righteous, who are we? وَأَلْحِقْنَا بِالصَّالِحِينَ. I ask Allah, Ya Allah, make every single one of us be amongst the righteous on Yawm al-Qiyamah. That's who we want to be with. We want to be with those who we love. And who should we love most? As-Salihin, those who are of the righteous. This was the dua of Yusuf. He says, take me when I'm submitted to you, O Allah. وَأَلْحِقْنِي بِالصَّالِحِينَ. And attach me with those who are righteous. Make me of those who are righteous. Now, al-hiq or ilhaq means to attach, like when you have a hook, right? And you hook it into something like a skin of an animal. How hard would it be if you want to take it out? It's nearly impossible. If you have like a hook of a those fishing poles, if you go fishing, those hook on a fish, there's a technique to take it out. And if you don't use that technique, it's impossible. Right? So in fact, there's a lot of people who, first-time fishermen, they would hook themselves. And they can't take it out. So they would have to go to the doctor to take the hook out. So ilhaq means to attach yourself as if it's a hook. That's what he's saying here. To attach me to those who are righteous. Don't make me let go. I want to be with them, so much so that I want to hook myself with those people. Is that clear? That's the dua of Yusuf alayhi salam. Amazing dua. The last words of the story of Yusuf is this dua. After everything that we know of Yusuf alayhi salam, this is what he asked. Simple, humble, somebody who is not attached to this dunya. In fact, there is nothing that he's attached more than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We can see that step by step by step. He is attached to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in a way where we can only hope to imagine. And I ask Allah through the story of Yusuf alayhi salam that we find a sense of love and attachment to not only the Quran, to not only our prophets, but to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The story of Yusuf is amazing in a sense where it brings us close to Allah like never before. This is the Quran. To give you an example, to give you a story, not to entertain you. That's not what it's meant to be. The stories of in the Quran is not meant for entertainment. That's why it's missing so many details. That's why Allah tells it the way it is. That's why the story of Musa alayhi salam is scattered all over the Quran. Because it's not a storybook. The stories in the Quran is meant to change your heart. It's meant to attach our hearts to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And wallahi, if it doesn't do that, there's nothing in this world. There's nothing on this earth that will do that for you. If the Quran doesn't make you closer to Allah, there's nothing in this world that will do that. So I ask Allah, may Allah enlighten our hearts with the Quran. May Allah give us love and understanding of His book. And may Allah brings us closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Just how Yusuf alayhi salam had that attachment to Allah, and ask Allah to give us, every single one of us, that same exact attachment. I don't know how, but that's the attachment that I really want. And the only thing is to practice the examples of the Quran. And this is what, ikhwan, this is one of many examples that we can learn in the Quran. One. And wallahi, I swear by Allah, from the beginning of this class until today, there is so much of my notes that I did not share with you guys. I left things out due to time or due to just, sequential order of the story, or other purposes as well. But there is so much of the story that I left out purposefully. Now, if there's anything that we benefited from this surah, if there's anything that we benefited, I want to just make it clear that we use this example to continue studying the Quran. Because there's no book that would do anything for you, whether it's an answer in your life, a situation that you're in, a problem that you have, whether it's in Islam or Iman or in the worldly sense. Anything that you can learn or take that will benefit you in this world or in the hereafter is in the Quran. And we can take this away just from one surah. Imagine the entire Quran. One prophet, one example. How much more can we take from the Quran if this is Surah Yusuf and we can benefit this much? So I ask Allah inshallah to help us continue studying and loving the Quran. وصلى الله على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.